he's a cutie pie. I might put him in Potomac. Okay, yes. Yeah, he can come right on to Potomac.
All right, what's up, guys? It's your boy, Richie Sky. We are back with another video, Sky Squad. We are here today with the Paul Wharton, okay? And let me tell you why we are having this chat today. Because, first of all, I've been wanting to talk to him for quite some time because I followed his work ever since I saw him on that big screen on Real Housewives of DC, okay? Now, for those of you guys who don't remember, it was one season, but it was one heck of a season. Paul, what have you been up to during this quarantine? Well, first of all, can you tell people a little bit about your background? Because I want them to get to know who you are if they don't already.
Absolutely. Well, first of all, you're obviously a young buck. Richie Scott. If you just saw me on the Real Housewives of DC, what about like 7 years before that on Made? Do you remember Made on MTV?
You were on Made.
I launched it. Yes,
Live.
I was the guy who made it. Was a one-off when I did it. It was me making the girl Naja into a model, the girl from Philly, and I brought her to New York City and made her into a model and stuck her around. It was just going to be that one show, and they spun it off into a BMX rider, a prom queen, a rock band.
Yes,
for 13 seasons. So yeah, can you imagine?
Shut up.
Yes. And I went from Made, and then I got a job on the Ricky Lake show, the original Ricky Lake show. So I used to help people get dates, and they actually partnered Lauren Lake and I. Lauren Lake from Fraternity Court.
Yeah.
We were like partners, so we used to help people. We used to give them makeovers and help them get dates and do full-figured model searches and all the fun stuff on Ricky Lake. And I guess from there, I stayed in kind of that model space, and I did a show on VH1 called The Agency. And then I went to TV Land to a show called She's Got the Look, where we helped older models from age 40 to 70 break into the business. That was a lot of fun. And from there, I actually came back down to DC and I started working for TV One. And that's where I did Makeover Manor. And we did the first live format show on TV One. It was called the DNC Live After Party during the Democratic National Convention for Barack Obama. So that was just a really, really great time. And then we had the first Black version of Fashion Police on BET. Do you remember that? Who Wore What?
Yes.
And that was me and Vivica Fox, Vanessa Simmons, and Farnsworth Bentley.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that was in 2010, and that's when we did Housewives. So Housewives came out. I was working on the CW for 10 years, and I moved over to Fox 5, and I've just kind of been doing my thing. Creating TV shows is at the top of the realm. Like, that's what I really focus on.
The funny thing about it is, when I saw your Real Housewives of DC, I was like, oh, who is this Black socialite? Let's get to know.
I love that.
I said, let's get to know him, because you, to me, were, I mean, I don't even think that they really had friends of the show at that point. I felt like you were as much integrated into the cast as the rest of the cast members.
Yeah, and I think when I really realized that, I knew it because I kind of helped pull some of the other ladies in, and I was involved in a lot of their stories, not just a friend of one of them. But when they started asking me to do the testimonial shoots, in the episodes, that's when I was like, I should be getting a check for this. Like, what's going on? You know what I mean? Like, you come into my house, you running my good electric. Somebody gotta give me a check for something. So, but it ended up being a really great experience.
So for those of you guys who are wondering, why this is timely at this moment, not to mention the work that he's already doing right now currently, but Real Housewives DC is actually going to be having a marathon. And by the time you guys watch this, that marathon will be on, I guess it's Friday the 22nd on Bravo, right?
Yeah.
So this is just in time for Memorial Day weekend, right? And I am a fan of all Housewives shows, and especially of DC. I have all these episodes on my iTunes. I watch them every time I get on a plane. So I do have some specific questions for you, Paul, just to kind of, take you back.
Listen, we can go back together. I look, I was telling you, this is a hell of a flashback Friday for me because I haven't thought about it. I have not seen this show in years. So let's go back together. Just be gentle with me, baby, because I don't.
Okay, let's go. Let's go.
But let's see.
How did you, because and I think you kind of alluded to this just a second ago. How did you become a part of this? Because it seemed like you were kind of the nucleus of this entire group.
Yeah, so I started hearing buzzing about Bravo exploring coming to DC. They had hooked up with, partnered with Half Yard Productions, and I think Mary Amons was the first woman to get cast in the show. And then they started talking to different people. And around that time, the casting person from Half Yard, I think her name was Heather. I met with her, and she basically was like, "Well, who else?" And I gave her some names of different people. I know at the time, Mikhail Salahi, that was a good friend of mine at the time. And I suggested Mikhail Salahi, and they ended up casting her. Linda and I were very good friends. I don't know how Linda came to the table. I'm not sure if I had anything to do with that. But, Linda had the modeling agency. I worked in the modeling industry. I had an agency for a short period of time, but Linda and I were very close then, and we're still very close. I didn't know Kat, but I did know Stacy. So I just happened to have an organic relationship with a lot of the women. Of course, being in Chocolate City, I kind of thought that the balance should have been, if they were going to do a franchise, a city with kind of, white and black. I don't know. I felt like we could have had a couple more black people, but
absolutely.
But overall, it was a great show. For the time, it's like the fiercest read was, "You need to eat a burger and fries." You know what I mean? It's like in current Housewives standards, and then what? You know what I mean? Where's the real read? But I liked it because Richie, it wasn't like malicious. I felt like the drama was extremely organic. And, it was kind of a long time coming, and it was deeply rooted in relationships that had gone on for years and years and years. So it wasn't superficial drama. And that's kind of what I liked about the show. It wasn't really mean spirited. It was naturally dramatic.
And I felt like, what I liked about it, and I think you touched on this, was that the relationships were there. The relationships seemed organic. There was history amongst, different pockets of the ladies, except for maybe Kat. But, even still, she seemed to mesh well with even some of the ancillary characters that were on the show, like Ted and, I cannot remember his partner's name. But I also like that the show touched on, even though the sort of reads and shade probably wouldn't be satisfactory today, it dealt with like progressive topics like sexuality, black and white relations and all that stuff. How was that naturally occurring, or did they tell you guys to focus on any of that?
No, I think that's par for the course with doing a follow doc like that in a town like DC. You have to talk about, the line between politics and culture and socialization and addressing things like racism. And all of that is a part of our conversation here in DC. You can't really push that to the side. So I was just thinking back on the fact that gay marriage wasn't legal when we started shooting that show.
But it was a topic.
Right? And we talked about it. And I brought the ladies down to the city council hearings for gay marriage. And the interesting thing was, even though that was only 10 years ago, not all of the cast was on board for gay people being able to have the same rights to be as miserable as straight people in their marriage. It's just like, you don't want me to be able to get married? Like, what's up with that? So Yeah, that was even something that I think is going to be interesting to watch again and think about, wow, that wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, especially because it was the black couple on the show that had the biggest issue with it. So to me, it'll be really interesting, to kind of rewatch that play out. Can we talk really quick about you and is it Michaela or Mikhail?
Well, I called her Mikhail. Linda calls her Michaela. I think because she didn't like it. I think Michaela was her name before she got money. Do you know what I mean? It's like one of those things where, like, you marry up, you get an Aston Martin. I don't know what happened, and then she changed her name to Mikhail. But Linda would always say, listen, her name is Michaela from back in the day when she worked. I think Mikhail was a makeup girl at one of the counters or something like that. So that's where she and Linda met.
Yes, I remember Mary shadily telling us that in one of her confessionals that she used to be her makeup artist. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Mikhail, I mean, she is one half of what used to be the Salahis who, got into the White House through some unscrupulous methods, allegedly.
Yeah.
For you and looking back at that relationship, I mean, we saw her throw you a birthday party.
Yeah.
Did she really host it? I just gotta ask that question because there was a lot. I mean, that was the controversy for like episodes 2 and 3.
Yeah, absolutely. So the birthday party, the interesting thing is somebody was telling me she left you hanging at the Four Seasons, and I'm like, what? And then I watched it and I was like, damn, she left me sitting at the Four Seasons. My hair done. Kind of bitch. Like in modern day, I would really get somebody good for that. But she essentially, the party was thrown at the park. The park, for everybody to see, is owned by Mark Barnes. Mark Barnes is a longtime friend of mine. And Mark said that he would pay for the party. But it was kind of like a game of telephone. It's like Mark said that. And then by the time the Salahis heard it, they were like, we're paying for the party. You know how on those shows, like any of the Housewives shows, they'll go on a cast trip and it'll be hosted, let's just say in Atlanta, like Nene will host a trip or even in Potomac, one of the girls will host a trip. They're not really paying for that. So it was kind of like that. It was like they were hosting the party, but somewhere in translation, they started saying that they were paying for the party. So if it's one thing that people ask me the most on the street, probably since that whole show experience, is like, did they really walk out on the check for your party? And sometimes they're like, you poor thing. I'm like, honey, I'm not washing dishes. Like, everything's okay. We got out okay.
But you know what? It was just the audacity. That's what I think every time I watch it. Like, really? Why?
Yeah, it was kind of crazy. Yeah, they did have that kind. I mean, they rolled up to the party in a stretch white limousine.
The white limo.
With a police escort. You remember that? I'm like, wait a minute. It seemed like maybe the limousine didn't make it through emissions. Like, are the police after them or are they giving them the escort? Like, what is happening? Like, what a way to take the shine away from the birthday boy, right? You roll up with the lights flashing.
Literally.
Don't bring the cops to a black man's birthday party. Note 1 to white people. Like, don't bring the cops to my birthday party. Like, you know what I mean? Crazy.
So listen, as the season went on and they had the whole scandal with the White House, how were you relating to her at that point? Were you guys still as close when that happened?
No, she started to really pull back and become a bit of a recluse. They were going through a lot with his family. They were going through a lot with their vineyard. She was dealing with what we all have dealt with from time to time, depression. And, in a show like that, the thing about it is, if you're not, you have to be your authentic self. Let me tell you something. I remember being a young creative in New York City and having to choose between buying a slice of pizza and a Metro card. Do I want to walk from downtown back home to Harlem with my pizza, or do I want to take the Metro or the subway and get home with that? That's a part of my history. Yeah. It's not all blowouts and glam and good jewelry and cars and watches and stuff like that. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
This creative thing has been you know, until you get to a certain stage and age, you're not on God's time. You're not on your own time. You're on God's time. It'll happen when it happens. So I think when people get the opportunity to do these reality shows, the kiss of death is being in a house that you call your own, that's not your own. You know, you want to try to be as authentic as possible. And that's where you get longevity, I think, in reality. But when you try to take it, and so she was depressed because it was crumbling all around her, the facade of what she was trying to put out to the public.
Why do you think the show did not come back after that season?
Well, I do know at the time that even though people think like, oh, is that really the reason why? What really happened is the tapes got subpoenaed by the government or some whatever. I thought it was a really bad look to have these people showing these people being able to get into the White House that weren't invited. They held up the release of the show for a long, long, long time. The show almost never aired in the first place.
Remember,
but NBC fought for it, and then it ended up getting on. So, I mean, it was going to be tough to bring it back. It was almost like too much of a fight to like, you know, it just wasn't worth it, I guess, for the powers that be. But in the end, I thought the show had really organic, natural drama, and people were pretty authentic. And then when it came crashing down, when they had no choice but to be authentic, that was awfully juicy, having them sit in front of the congressional hearing and we're sitting there in Linda's house watching that. I mean, I haven't seen anything that dramatic on a Housewives show.
I haven't either. And we've seen a lot of dramatics happen on Housewives. Mm-hmm. So I think for me, I felt like the show had so much more story to tell, especially after that happened.
You're right. I agree. And I think also in the first season of Housewives, you have to realize this was in 2010. We didn't really know. I mean, there had been Jersey and Atlanta for just their first season or two. Things hadn't been on for a long time. So I think the cast was trying to find their sweet spot, find their authentic voice.
Yeah.
What we were trying to sell, child. I had all kind of hair care products, plans, books, skincare, never put off for season 2 what you should be checking in season 1. That's my big lesson, because I had big plans to be like the first, Bethany skinny girl in season 2 of DC Housewives. I was going to sell everything. But, I had to take the long way around, but it's okay.
So speaking of that, tell us what you've been up to since you left Housewives. I mean, I know that there's been a lot, but I want people to know exactly, what you've done ever since.
Yeah. So I create TV shows. I produce shows. Every year I do a holiday special. I did one this last year called A Fabulous Holiday and my friends, my best friend is Jennifer Lewis, the mother of Black Hollywood. She popped into the show. Vanessa Williams, the one I did the year before that with Patti LaBelle at her house, was nominated for an Emmy. I wrote a book since then. My book came out called Pulling It All Together. I'm actually on my second book, and we're almost done with that. And I have a cookbook that I'm working on. And I have hair care products. I should have brought them. They're over there. Hair care products, I have skincare products, candles, and different lifestyle things that I really like. And now I'm working with Mona Scott. She's my partner in producing new TV shows. We're partnered up on several projects, 5 or 6 projects. And I'm just working on that, casting my shows, working on them. Tell me.
What advice would you give to someone who wants to get into the industry to do what you do? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that not every dust up is their dust up. Do you know? A lot of people have their own things going on with each other, and it's important to be magnanimous. You don't always have to be the loudest. You don't always have to have the last word. Be magnanimous and be an expert at something. Whatever you're good at, be really good at that and just focus on that. And sometimes you have to stay in your lane, because when the spotlight comes around your way, that's your moment. It's not your moment to pop in on everybody else's drama, because sometimes you all go down and sink with the ship. But I feel like I've been able to rise above a lot of the little perfunctory little drama and just kind of be even keeled, get my tribe, figure out who those people are that really love and support me, and go forward in that way. So always take the high road. That's my final piece of advice.
I love it. I love it. And with that, guys, I want to say thank you so much, Paul, for taking the time out to chat with us today. We will be looking forward to watching this marathon of Real Housewives of DC and all of your other projects. Sky Squad, thank you guys so much for watching us. And of course, subscribe to the channel, and we will see you in the next video.
You're awesome. Thank you for having me. Thank you so much for having me, Richie.
No problem. Thank you.
Hey, babe.